The Tiwi people have historically been difficult to study. They are isolated on two small islands in the Northern Territory of Australia. This map shows the vastness of Australia. And this map zooms in on the roughly 2,500 square kilometers of space the Tiwi inhabit. All of the studies HRAF has to offer took place between the early 1900s and about 1980. They are one of the most isolated populations in the world, and have been so for generations. Charles Hart even said they had physically evolved differently than the mainland Aborigines. In this humanities course, we have been studying different races and communities from around the globe, and I'm sure we have all seen intriguing rituals. The Tiwi have a couple rituals that are still hard to pin down even after decades of research. Jane Goodale did more than half of the research I could find on HRAF, and she has made many nice articulations on reasoning behind their practices. But she still claims that many statements are still speculations based on observation. So let's start with the marriage ritual. They determine couples based on an extremely complex set of guidelines. Firstly, all girls are designated a future husband between birth and the age of 10 years old. The maternal grandfather has the rights to set up the marriage because he has the responsibility for the health and success of his family. If he has passed on, however, the mother gets to make this decision. As for a suitable partner, I'm sure many of us have seen in our own studies that in these isolated communities, cousins are a preferred partner. This is a controversial tradition to Western people, but the tradition continues with the Tiwi. Marriage contracts start early for the females and at around age 20 for the males. Goodale writes in her article titled Marriage Contracts Among the Tiwi that, quote, few men under the age of 30 had received wives, and only one girl over the age of 10 had not been given to her promised husband. The average age between wives and first husbands was 18.9 years, with a range from 3 to 54 years, end quote. They have a coming-of-age ritual for both male and female. The Tiwi have a deeply ingrained opposition to photography, so a physical documentation of some of these processes are nearly impossible to find. The female ritual seems to focus on the menstruation initiation. Before a girl is given to her husband, she lays on the ground with a spear between her legs, and the men of her and her husband's family line up to hit her with large feathers. After everyone else has their turn, the husband's turn comes to hit her. She then gets up, runs away, and he pursues her until she reaches a tree. She then kneels to him as a sign of companionship and an acceptance of reliance on him, and the ritual is complete. The male coming-of-age ritual has little to do with marriage or physiological processes, but the tradition is deeply rooted in overcoming hardship. Basically, they do it when he is physically fit to both endure the test and provide for a family. Everything starts with a toxic yam called the kulama, seen in this picture. That was a picture of a family collecting kulama. Now, a lot of preparation has to go into the yam to detoxify it, including soaking, baking, peeling, mashing, and re-soaking for a full day. This is a picture of the family doing that. As I will explain in a few moments, this is the only time men are allowed to dig in the ground for food. The yam is extremely bitter, and the taste is a challenge in and of itself. Before the boy eats it, and while it's being prepared, people dance and sing chants around a well-prepared circle. This is a picture of them rubbing the yam on their bodies for strength. And this is a picture of them preparing the ring. that they dance around. The entire ceremony takes 3 days, and once completed the boy is eligible to provide food for his family. The next aspect to be admired of the Tiwi is their economic practices. Though they don't pay attention to the same things we do like imports, exports, and GDP, they do have a well-functioning economic dynamic. Jane Goodale says the land and people are broken up into Tungarima, which she calls countries, and then further broken up into camps, which make up the closer family communities. The people divide the land in order to provide the proper resources to the population. They claim a pseudo-ownership to the land and have ultimate reign over who gets to hunt there. But they are also overall a prosperous-minded class of people. So if one area lacks the proper resources to contribute, they gladly give permission to cross borders. Women and men have distinct jobs they are allowed to perform. Women are only allowed to gather food from beneath the ground, on its surface, and on the shore. And men can only hunt in the air, on the surface of the ground, and in the sea. Goodale would only speculate as to why this came about, but she thinks that physical ability to produce efficiently plays a key role. The isolation and self-sustainability of the Tiwi intrigues anthropologists. They have diplomatic ways of separating different tribes geographically and emotionally. What early explorers saw as a savage people have since been found to be ingenuous, welcoming, and accepting. Nobody wants to be forcefully influenced by outsiders, but aside from limiting actions such as photography, the Tiwi had begun adapting to Western influence by the 1970s with the building of schools and on-the-job training. Their economic practices seem to work efficiently and fairly. Supply and demand still affects their daily lives, and they have methods to deal with these fluctuations. We may see their marriage customs as barbaric, but all societies go through changes and periods of enlightenment. I would like to see updated studies to the numerous findings of Jane Goodale and the early findings of Charles Hart in the 1920s, but from the ease with which Goodale says they adopted to schools and jobs, their populations are likely growing and flourishing. Thanks for watching my presentation on the Tiwi tribes of Northern Australia. I hope everybody had a good 4th of July.